To play for the Wallabies was and is a very big deal.
I've been in 2 World Cup final winning teams.
We knew where we wanted to be and what we had to do to get there.
And we were. Australia was one step ahead of the rest of the world.
And we were making a lot of money.
I'm trying to re-establish my love. It's taking work.
See what I mean?
There are 17-year-olds walking around who haven't seen us win the Bledisloe Cup.
Somebody turned off the taps.
I think that's become a harder thing to accept from an Australian supporter's point of view.
Do you think Australian rugby is dead or dying?
It's got a pulse.
Well, just from that trailer, one thing I can tell you is I cannot wait to see it. That is a documentary that will be flighting this Saturday at 6:30 in the evening. Now, SABC Sport has got exclusive rights to this documentary. It's the first time that it's going to be flighted outside of the Australian borders. And just promised before the ad break, I do have with me Matt Durrant. He joins us, of course, on Zoom. He is currently in Nigeria. He directed and produced this documentary called Gold Digger. Thank you so much for your time. Maybe just a synopsis in terms of what is this documentary in fact about?
Yeah, look, the Gold Digger started straight after the 2019 Rugby World Cup when Australia got unceremoniously kicked out. I can't remember who actually won that World Cup, but we don't need to talk about that. But I was a bit frustrated as a Wallaby fan, and if you look at Australian performance in the last 2 decades, it's sort of changed a lot from when we used to be very good in the 90s. So I just wanted to sort of seek answers. So I started a documentary, and it sort of just led me down this fairly long and twisted path to interview former Wallabies, former coaches, former administrators, and even some people from grassroots rugby. And it's sort of become a bit of a, I suppose it started as a quest, but it's now turned into a bit of an obsession of mine. So the film effectively represents the journey that I've taken as a fan to try and get to the bottom of what's happened to Australian rugby.
Absolutely, because in terms of Australia, they were at their peak in 1991, 1999, winning the World Cups, 2003 coming so close, losing to England. So what are you finding in terms of the documentary and all your investigations have led to the so-called downfall of the Wallabies?
I think it's a combination of things. I think, the world has certainly gotten a lot stronger, and we're seeing that with countries, certainly like Ireland, who are becoming far more competitive, and, teams like Japan and even Italy now starting to get better. But I think the biggest thing is that the sport has always struggled in Australia because it's not, unlike South Africa, which, rugby fans in Australia are very envious of, it's not the most #1 winter sport. It's probably 3rd, maybe even 4th behind Australian rules football, rugby league and soccer, or football as many people call it. So that's been a big problem. And since 2003, when everyone was focusing on the game because we hosted the World Cup, we've sort of never quite lived up to that level of excitement again. And the Wallaby performance just hasn't helped.
And also very interesting is that you got first-hand accounts, from the legends of the game, the Rod McQueens, the John Eales. Just maybe talk us through some of the legends that are also going to feature in this documentary.
Yeah, look, John Eales, Rod McQueen and John O'Neill were 3 people I thought very important because they were the coach, captain and the CEO at the time in which Australia had its golden era, as we all refer to it. I've been able to talk to a few other people, Michael Liner, other Wallabies, more recent Wallabies like Adam Fryer, Ben Alexander, and of course Ben Darwin, who many people who have been following my journey in making this are probably aware of, is a former Wallaby who had to retire hurt, but has now become a real world-leading analyst around not just rugby, but a lot of other sports. And him and his company provide a lot of insights, which I think go towards explaining largely what's happened to Australian rugby.
You also make mention of financial mismanagement. I can also imagine that the pandemic also had an impact in terms of the shooting, you know, and just putting things together. Maybe just talk us through some of those hiccups that you also experienced along the way.
Yeah, well, look, this was a self-funded feature film. So, you know, me and my co-partner on this, we just, you know, pulled together and we started shooting in January 2020. It seemed like a great time to be, you know, starting a film, and within 2 months we had to stop. I had to fly back to Europe where I live, and he stayed in Australia. But fortunately, we had shot a lot of interviews and B-roll by that stage, so we were able to, during the lockdown period, try to do remote interviews, use stock footage, insert graphics, and just find unique ways in which we could try and get the story finished. And we did. So it was a really challenging but enjoyable experience.
And maybe just quickly, you know, what are you hoping to achieve with this documentary? What is the next step from here?
I really hope that this informs more rugby fans in Australia, because that's really who it's for. But I think it will also inform rugby fans around the world. And, you know, I know, talking to South African rugby, you know, friends and people who I've met along the way, there's actually a very good, strong awareness and respect and knowledge about Australian rugby overseas. And it's no surprise to me that the film is premiering in South Africa, which I'm very grateful for. Yeah. But I think that sort of also suggests that, you know, Australian rugby is still, you know, it's still fighting for relevancy back home. So I'm hoping that this film starts a conversation and develops, you know, renews the interest that used to be there, because we used to sell out stadiums. We used to have, you know, TV records for some of our games against the All Blacks and the Springboks. And, you know, I'd like to think that, you know, we could get closer to getting back to that stage again, but it might take a little while. So hopefully this film starts that process.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Matt Durrant, of course, joining us via Zoom. He is currently in Nigeria. But in terms of SABC Sport, we have the exclusive rights for this documentary. It will be premiering this weekend on Saturday at 6:30. It is called Gold Digger, and I, for one, cannot wait for it.